The mirror was still fogged from her shower. That's the first thing I remember. Not the betrayal. Not the chaos that followed. The fog. Like the room itself didn't want me to see what was happening inside. I wasn't even supposed to be there. The night before the wedding, tradition said I should be at the hotel with the guys. But Emily forgot her bracelet. Some vintage thing she said held luck in its clasp. Her words, not mine. She texted me about it 3 times, then called. I figured I'd swing by her place, grab it, and head out before she even knew I was there. Front door was unlocked. Odd. But this close to the wedding, I chalked it up to nerves. Maybe she'd gone to get something from the car. Maybe the girls were drinking champagne and forgot to lock up. I didn't knock. Just walked in. Quiet. Respectful. Like a damn idiot. The place was quiet, too quiet. Not TV quiet. Not background music quiet. Deliberately quiet. The kind that hums behind your ears, just enough to let you know you're not alone. I passed the dining table. There was a single empty wine glass with a smudge of lipstick on the rim. But here's the thing, Emily doesn't wear lipstick. Not ever. Too sticky, she says. Always gloss. And never red. This one was deep, plum-colored. A color that doesn't just land on your lips by accident. Something inside me twitched. I turned toward the hallway, half expecting her to pop out and laugh. Maybe her sister was playing a prank. Bridal nerves, girls being weird. But the closer I got to the bathroom door, the more wrong it felt. Not horror movie wrong. Not ghost in the wall wrong. Calculated. Like someone had hit pause on a scene they didn't want anyone else to see. There were voices behind the door. Not loud. Murmured. Familiar tones, tangled in each other like wires you can't separate. I recognized 3 things instantly. My fiancé's laugh. My brother's half-whispered smugness. And the unmistakable uptick in my best friend Jason's voice when he was lying. None of them were saying anything specific. Just the kind of murmuring people do when they shouldn't be speaking at all. I didn't kick the door open. I didn't even knock. I waited. 1 second. 2. 3. Long enough for the reality to catch up with my body. Long enough for my hand to stop halfway to the doorknob. And that's when it creaked open on its own. A mistake. Their mistake. 3 silhouettes. 3 outlines in the steam. Her robe on the floor. Jason's watch on the sink. And Mark's shoes, my brother's designer shoes, lined neatly just outside the bath mat. The visual of it all was so choreographed. Not passion. Routine. Emily didn't scream. She flinched, then caught herself. Like a performer who forgot her cue. She didn't cover herself either. Instead, she raised 1 finger, as if to stop me mid-thought. This isn't what you think. I didn't answer. Jason didn't even look at me. He reached for a towel like we were in a locker room after a game. Mark grinned. I swear to God, he grinned, like this was a joke, like I was the one making a scene. Emily stepped forward, hair wet, eyes wild, but not ashamed. Calculating. Already spinning a narrative I hadn't asked to hear. You always blow things out of proportion, she said. Like when? I replied. My voice was low, controlled. But my brain was lighting up, connecting dots I didn't know were there. You've been off for weeks, she continued. Obsessing over schedules, seating charts, floral arrangements. You're stressed. This is nothing. She actually said that. Nothing. I turned to Jason. What? You forgot to RSVP to the wedding, so you just showed up early to warn the bride? No answer. I looked at Mark. He shrugged. No remorse. No guilt. Just that detached expression he always wore when he was bored with people. And then Emily reached for my arm. That's when I stepped back. You were going to marry me, I said slowly. In 6 hours. It doesn't have to change anything, she said, and my stomach flipped. That sentence told me everything I needed to know. I didn't yell, didn't throw a punch. I looked down, at the ring on her finger, at the bracelet in my pocket, at the fogged mirror behind them all. Then I smiled. A quiet, terrible kind of smile. No, you're right, I said. It doesn't have to change anything. Then I walked out of the bathroom. But I didn't leave the house. I stayed. Long enough for them to think I was gone. Long enough for what came next to start unfolding. They had no idea the wedding wasn't canceled. It had only just begun. They didn't follow me right away. Maybe they were stunned. Maybe they were too wrapped up in their own filth to care that the groom just caught them rehearsing their little betrayal on ceramic tiles and steam. Either way, it bought me time. I walked into the kitchen, sat at the counter, and pulled out my phone. Not to call anyone. No, I wasn't going to do anything that obvious. I opened the Notes app, titled A New Entry. Guest List, Revisions. That's how it started. I didn't delete Emily. I didn't delete Mark. I didn't even delete Jason. I reassigned them. Mark, Groom's Brother Entertainment. Jason, Best Man Security Issue. Emily, Bride Unfinished Business. And then I got to work. First, I texted the venue. A simple lie, but clean, minor change in entrance time. Will arrive 30 minutes late. Do not alert guests. They confirmed. I added a smiley at the end, just for fun. The lady who handled our reservation always liked a friendly tone. She'd never question me. Next, I made a quick call to the florist. Told her we wanted to shift the floral centerpiece from the front altar to center of reception, directly under the chandelier. She was confused, said it would throw off the symmetry. I told her it was an aesthetic preference. She reluctantly agreed. I could still hear faint movement from the hallway. Doors opening. Whispering. But no one dared enter the kitchen. Not yet. I think they assumed I was in shock. That I'd go for a drive. Cry on the hood of my car. Sleep in a hotel lobby. Swiping through old photos and wondering where it all went wrong. They didn't know me at all. I didn't spiral. I didn't drink. I didn't rage. I organized. I poured myself a glass of water, sat back, and reviewed the timeline of that morning. Every second mattered now. Because what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd already been suspicious for 2 weeks. It started with the gift box. About 14 days before this lovely bathroom surprise, Emily had handed me a wrapped package. Said it was a little early wedding present. A book. First edition. My favorite author. Insanely rare. Except one thing stuck out. Jason had once told me that same edition was his dream collectible. I remembered because he was drunk when he said it, and he never read fiction. So why was Emily giving it to me? Where did she even get it? The book still smelled like Jason's cologne. A bitter, earthy scent. Like someone who wanted to be remembered even after they left the room. At the time, I brushed it off. But it stayed with me. And once you start smelling smoke, it's only a matter of time before you start seeing where the fire's been hiding. So I ran a test. Last weekend, I accidentally left my phone in Emily's apartment while I went to get us brunch. 10 minutes later, I used my laptop to access the microphone. Nothing fancy, just a simple home monitoring app. She never noticed the extra permissions. Why would she? What I got wasn't damning. Not words exactly, just tone, whispers, nervous pacing. A laugh that only came out when she was around Mark. The kind that came with inside jokes and unfinished sentences. It was enough to make me delay finalizing our honeymoon flights. It was enough to make me plan. Because here's what people never tell you. Betrayal has layers. It's not just one cut. It's paper cuts stacked on top of gashes, and you only start bleeding when the last one hits deep enough. Back in the kitchen, I started writing down names. Not enemies. Just people I was done protecting. I thought about Sandra, Emily's maid of honor. Always the third wheel when I showed up unexpectedly. Always texting just a little too fast when I entered the room. I wrote her name down too. Then I heard the soft steps, finally, approaching. Emily. Her voice came from the edge of the doorway, tentative, like she wanted to rehearse sympathy but hadn't quite committed to the tone. Ben, can we talk? I didn't look up, just stared at the faucet, like it might say something more useful than she ever could. I don't want this to explode, she said. You know how the family is. This wedding, it's not just about us. Now I turned. Not slowly, not dramatically. Just enough to let her see my face. Just enough to make her realize I wasn't blinking anymore. You're right, I said. It's not just about us. I stood, walked past her. She followed me into the living room, still wearing the robe she never bothered to fully close. Can we please just figure this out? She asked. I stopped, pointed to the fireplace mantel. You remember what you said when we bought that clock? I asked. She glanced at it, confused. I don't. You said it was the kind of clock that would always tell the truth, that it'd let us know when we were wasting time. She looked at me, eyes beginning to narrow. Well, I continued, it just struck noon. Emily flinched, and for a flicker of a second, her jaw tightened, not in guilt, but in realization. Not that I was hurt, that I was calm. They weren't ready for calm. Calm is never good. Calm means the storm's not coming. It's already here. By the time Mark entered the room, I had already mapped out what I needed from each of them. He walked in like a man who owned the place, shirtless, careless, carrying that stupid smug look that he'd been perfecting since we were kids. He didn't speak. Just stood there, arms crossed, like I was supposed to apologize for walking in on them. Emily turned to him instinctively, like I'd just thrown a test question, and she was waiting for the smarter student to give the answer. But Mark didn't offer one. He just stared at me, then at her, then back at me again. "You done sulking?" he asked. That was it. His opening line. Emily looked horrified, but not because of what he said. Because he said it so plainly. Like they'd already discussed this. Like they prepared for a version of this fallout where I'd eventually come around. Like betrayal was a speed bump, not a wall. I tilted my head. Interesting choice of words. Sulking. Don't turn this into a production, Ben, he muttered, casually walking to the minibar we never used and pouring himself some whiskey. We all make mistakes. You do, I replied, but you usually make them with people outside your family. That's when Emily finally stepped back in, a little more nervous now. Not because I was angry, but because I wasn't. My hands were in my pockets. I wasn't pacing. I wasn't shouting. I was composed. And she knew me well enough to realize how dangerous that was. Look, she said quickly, this wasn't planned, okay? It was just, it happened. Oh, I know it wasn't planned, I said. Spur of the moment. That's why you packed an overnight bag with Jason's hoodie in it. The one he lost at the lake house 3 months ago. I saw it hanging by your closet. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Just a slow turn of the head toward Mark, who looked genuinely caught off guard for the first time. That was the beauty of what I had set in motion. I didn't need to prove anything. I just needed to remind them that I already knew far more than I should. That every move they made was now a clue I'd already read, filed, and labeled. Jason was the only one missing from the room, and that was by design. Jason runs. That's what he does. Gets quiet when things go loud. Which meant he was either in the guest room pretending to nap, or he'd already snuck out. I didn't care. He was the least important piece. Emily turned to me. Please, Ben. We made a mistake. A huge one. But can we fix this? We can cancel the ceremony. We don't have to tell anyone why. We'll just say. Say what? I interrupted. That you suddenly realized your brother-in-law and your fiancé's best friend had more shared chemistry than your future husband? Mark scoffed. Come on. Don't make this into some Greek tragedy. I walked up to him. Not close enough to hit. Just close enough that he'd feel the difference in height, in presence, and focus. Mark, what did I get you for your 30th birthday? He blinked. What? Your birthday. What did I give you? He hesitated. The cufflinks. I nodded. The antique ones. Engraved. From Dad's collection. Mark nodded, looking uncertain. Now tell me what you gave me for mine last month. He paused longer. Emily stepped in. That's not fair. No, let's hear it, I said. I still on Mark. What did you give me? Mark's voice lowered. Dinner. That reservation at. Jason made that reservation. You showed up 45 minutes late and left before dessert. He looked away. I turned to Emily. You think this is about heartbreak? I asked. You think I walked in there and broke inside? She opened her mouth again, but I raised a hand, not to silence her, but to let her know the answer wouldn't need her input. This isn't heartbreak. This is confirmation. I turned, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled out the garment bag. My tux. Still wrapped. Still pristine. I slung it over my shoulder like it was a gym bag. Emily rushed forward. What are you doing? Getting ready, I said. Just not for the wedding, you think? Her eyes darted. Ben, you can't just show up and pretend nothing happened. You'll ruin everything. I smiled. No, Emily. You ruined everything. I'm just going to make sure everyone gets to see it from the front row. Mark stepped forward. If you say one word to Mom and Dad. Oh, I won't, I said, grabbing the keys from the counter. I won't need to. They didn't understand yet. That was fine. The best stories don't give away the ending in the first act. I opened the door. Took one last look at them standing there, her robe slipping down one shoulder, his glass trembling just slightly, and walked out without another word. Outside, I got into my car and drove. Not to the hotel. Not to the venue. First stop, Sandra. She didn't know it yet, but she was going to be very helpful. Sandra lived in a high-rise downtown, one of those glass box apartments with too much chrome and not enough furniture, like she was always halfway moved in or halfway moved out. She liked the illusion of transition. It gave her an excuse to never explain anything fully. I buzzed her apartment. No answer. I buzzed again. Still nothing. I was just about to walk away when the intercom crackled. Who is it? Her voice was half asleep, half suspicious. It's Ben. I'm not here to scream. I just need 15 minutes. Pause. Then, reluctantly, top floor. I walked into the elevator and leaned back against the wall. The city felt wrong. Skyscrapers and brake lights smeared into each other like a slow panic attack. The weight of what I'd seen hadn't hit me yet. Maybe because I hadn't let it. Maybe because something darker had already started crawling up from the part of me I thought I'd buried years ago. I stepped out onto the top floor, and there she was, Sandra, leaning in her doorway, barefoot, wearing a sweatshirt that wasn't hers. Probably her latest creative type. I didn't comment. I wasn't there to shame her. I was there to see what she knew. You look like hell, she said, stepping aside. I didn't respond. Just walked in and stood in the middle of her living room. You heard yet? I asked, facing the windows. Heard what? I turned slowly. About the little spot treatment happening in Emily's bathroom this morning. Her face didn't react. Not immediately. But her eyes gave her away. That momentary flicker, recognition first, then calculation. Not surprise. I figured it out 2 weeks ago, she said finally. Didn't think it was my place. Didn't think it was your place to tell me my fiancé was sleeping with my brother and best friend? She crossed her arms. You want honesty or a comforting lie? Honesty. Always. Then yeah, I knew. Pieces of it. Enough. The rest I guessed. But the last guy who tried to warn a groom got blacklisted from the whole friend circle. I don't get medals for being the messenger, Ben. I nodded. Fair enough. She studied me for a second. You're calm. That worries me. I'm focused. There's a difference. She walked to the kitchen, poured herself coffee, didn't offer me any. I didn't need it. You didn't come here for sympathy, she said over her shoulder. No. I came here because you're the only one who knows both sides, and because you're just petty enough to help. Now she smiled. Now that's the Ben I know. All right. What do you need? I pulled a folded piece of paper from my jacket. Printed guest list. Marked in red, blue, and green. She took it, squinted, and raised an eyebrow. You're rearranging seating? No. I'm redesigning the theater. I pointed to the blue dots. People who've always suspected something was off between them. Who's Harold Klein? Emily's boss. She thinks he doesn't notice when she leaves early or shows up late. He's been documenting everything. Sandra looked up. You're making this public? No. I'm making it unavoidable. She set the paper down. What do you want from me? I want a leak. Casual. Nothing official. Just enough noise that people start looking in the wrong direction before the ceremony. Wrong direction? I nodded. Jason. I want people looking at Jason. She raised a brow. Why him? Because he runs. Because he caves. Because if I play this right, he'll be halfway to a confession before anyone asks a question. She stared at me a long moment. You're not just breaking it off. No. You're turning the wedding into an exhibit. Exactly. Sandra grinned. Well, damn. That's why I liked you. I grabbed my phone, pulled up a folder, and slid it across the table. She glanced at the thumbnails, screenshots, photos, even a small video from my hallway cam. The angle was subtle. The audio barely above a whisper. But the laughter was unmistakable. And there, timestamped, was Emily's voice asking Jason if he'd deleted the lake house pictures. Jesus, she muttered. You've been sitting on this? Waiting for the right curtain to rise. She scrolled through, slow at first, then faster. Then stopped. One photo caught her. Wait. This isn't Emily's hand. Look closer, I said. She zoomed in. On the edge of the mirror. A reflection. Sandra gasped softly. Oh my God. Exactly, I said. That's not just Emily, Jason, and Mark. That's her sister. I nodded. Welcome to Act 2. Now Sandra was fully awake. She walked to her desk, grabbed her laptop, and began typing furiously. You want this dirty, subtle, or catastrophic? Controlled burn. She grinned again. You're going to need champagne. Not for celebration. Just to make sure your hands stay steady. I leaned back. I'll drink after. She looked up from the keyboard. You sure you want to go through with this? I'm done protecting liars. She paused. You're not just walking out. No, I said, standing. I'm walking them in. Into what? Into the ending they've all been rehearsing behind my back. Sandra whistled low. All right. Curtains rising. And as I left, she called after me. They're going to regret underestimating you. I didn't reply. They already did. The venue smelled like roses and burnt stress. You could practically hear the tension in the air hissing between every tablecloth and centerpiece. No one suspected a thing yet, not the caterers, not the decorators, not the friends sipping early cocktails and pretending to enjoy classical string quartets through gritted teeth. I walked in through the service entrance. That was intentional. The bridal party was scheduled to arrive through the main archway at 3:45 sharp. Emily would make her entrance at 4:10. I had 25 minutes to make some adjustments. I bypassed the chapel entirely and went straight to the reception hall. The florist had followed my instructions. Centerpiece moved directly under the chandelier. Perfect sightline from every table. Spotlight aimed directly above. They thought it was for symmetry. I had other plans. I saw the AV tech guy tinkering with the monitors near the stage. His name tag said Tommy, and he looked like he lived in his van and cried over bad guitar solos. My kind of guy. You're the groom? He asked, half-wired on Red Bull and wedding anxiety. I nodded. You handle slideshows, videos, audio stuff? Yeah. Speeches, family photos, that kind of thing. You got something last minute? I do. I handed him a USB drive. He gave me a look. What's on it? A short compilation. No nudity. No violence. Nothing illegal. Let's call it a statement piece. Tommy looked uneasy. I mean, the planner's real picky about what goes up on the big screen. She won't mind. This is family approved. I held up my phone and showed him a forged email with the planner's signature. Sandra had whipped it up last night. Tommy shrugged. All right. I'll schedule it after the first dance. No. Right before the toasts. He raised a brow. Dramatic. You have no idea. By the time I left him with the file, I could already feel the blood start humming through my arms again. It wasn't nerves. It was precision. I had been moving through chaos like a surgeon, and this was just another incision. I made my way through the side hallway, cut across to the dressing rooms, and found the door labeled Groomsman's Suite. Jason was inside. Alone. He was sitting on the armrest of a leather couch, tie half-knotted, looking like he hadn't slept. Probably hadn't. Maybe he thought I'd call him. Maybe he thought I'd disappear and leave him out of it. Or maybe, in his twisted little mind, he thought I'd still go through with the ceremony just to keep face. He didn't notice me until I closed the door behind me. Ben, he said, standing too quickly. Listen, I know what it looked like. I know it's bad. But you and we've been friends for 20 years. I never wanted it to go this far. It just happened, I said. Right? He froze. It just happened to be my brother. It just happened to be my fiancé. It just happened the night before the wedding. Jason started to pace. I swear, it was never meant to get serious. Emily, she's a mess, man. You don't see it? She twists everything. She made me think. I'm going to stop you there, I said, taking a step closer. Because the more you talk, the dumber you sound. And I don't think you're dumb, Jason. I think you're just slippery. I didn't mean for you to find out like that. But you did mean for it to continue, didn't you? Silence. You know what's funny? I said, pulling a small square from my pocket. It was a keycard. I had this copied 3 weeks ago. To Emily's apartment. She never changed the passcode. I've walked in at least twice when you were there, and you didn't even notice. His eyes widened. I heard your voice on our balcony the night I was working late. You quoted that line from Say Seven, the one you always repeat when you're nervous. Jason sat down again, slowly this time. He wasn't trying to argue anymore. Just breathing heavy, like someone stuck in a conversation with the person holding the exit door shut. I didn't want to destroy you, he said finally. I knelt slightly, so we were eye level. But you did. He blinked. You destroyed the version of me that would have forgiven this. That version? Gone. But the one who walked into that bathroom? He's not the kind of man you can manipulate with half apologies and 20-year nostalgia. Jason swallowed hard. So what happens now? He asked. I smiled. Now? You walk out there, and you act like everything's fine. You hug my mother. You charm the bridesmaids. You pretend you're not a parasite wearing a tailored suit. And then, I said, standing, you'll see. Jason stood too, confused, sweating now. See what? I leaned in, just enough for him to hear it as a whisper. What I made for you. Then I walked out. Not rushed, not angry, just certain. Jason had no idea what was coming. And that was the point. For 10 p.m., right on cue, the quartet swelled into that saccharine prelude Emily insisted on, the same one she made me listen to on repeat during every single menu tasting and floral appointment. Now it played again, echoing across the ceremony lawn like nothing was broken. Like the groom wasn't delivering calculated revenge disguised as vows. I stood at the altar in full tux, boutonniere fresh, smile convincing. Jason was to my left, swallowing every 15 seconds like his tie was a noose. Mark was behind me, trying to look casual, but his jaw kept locking every time someone looked too long in his direction. And then she appeared. Emily, in her white dress. Our guests gasped. My mother clutched her chest like it was the first sunrise she'd ever seen. Even the venue photographer, who I had bribed earlier with a thick envelope, tilted his camera reverently, already composing the perfect shot. But all I saw was the veil. That veil. The one she insisted on custom ordering from France. Chantilly lace, intricate patterns, but when the sunlight hit it just right, it revealed more than she intended. Because woven into the delicate floral design, between the tiny silver threads and ivory trim, was a single detail she never noticed. A stain. Barely there. Light brown. Makeup? Coffee? No. I knew what it was. It was lipstick. That same dark plum tone I saw on a wine glass in her apartment 2 weeks ago. Not hers. Never hers. Her sister's. The detail was so subtle it might have been missed by anyone else. But I saw it. Because the veil wasn't new. It wasn't from France. It wasn't even hers. It had been borrowed, quietly, from her sister's closet, who, if Sandra's late-night research was accurate, had worn it in another ceremony 2 years ago, in another state, to another man. One she cheated on 6 months in. Symbolic? Absolutely. But not for the reasons Emily thought. She reached me, smiling too wide, clutching a bouquet so tight I thought the stems might snap. Her father handed her off like she was a prized antique. A few whispered blessings, a nod, and then he was gone. Now it was just me, her, the officiant, and a carefully curated audience. I glanced at Sandra near the back, dressed tastefully, clutching her phone. She gave the faintest nod. The game was live. The officiant began. His voice was steady, overly cheerful, like a cruise ship captain trying to mask engine failure. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. I tuned it out. Instead, I studied the crowd, section by section. My parents? Beaming. Her parents? Suspicious. Her mother kept darting glances at Emily like she was trying to find the cracks in her foundation. Jason's parents? Confused by his stiffness. Then there was Harold, Emily's boss, tapping his fingers on his lap, expression unreadable. And finally, near the open bar, a man in a tan linen suit, the secondary conflict. Colin, Emily's ex. We invited him out of maturity. She said she wanted to show him she'd moved on. What she didn't know was that Colin and I had coffee 6 days ago. He was surprisingly generous with information. Apparently, Emily never really broke up with him. Not cleanly. Just faded out. Stopped replying. He'd been ghosted. Until a few months ago, when she started liking his Instagram posts again. Sending vague replies at 2 a.m. Saying she was thinking about old times. What she didn't know was Colin never deleted any of it. I had screenshots. Messages. Dates. Timestamps. Even an audio clip she sent him of her humming the same prelude she was now walking down the aisle to. So when I reached out to him last week, he didn't hesitate. He even asked if he should sit front row. I said, no. You'll want a wide view of what happens next. Back at the altar, the officiant finally reached the good part. If anyone objects to this union. Silence. Of course there was silence. No one interrupts weddings in real life. But right on time, before I could even fake a breath. Click. The projector screen behind us turned on. The guest stirred. The officiant paused. Emily blinked. "Is this?" she started to whisper. I grabbed her hand gently. Smiled. "Don't worry. It's part of the vows." The screen flickered to life, and up came the first frame. A letter to the people who thought I wasn't paying attention. Jason stiffened. Emily turned pale. Sandra, from the back, tapped the screen on her phone once more. Next slide. Photo. Jason's car parked outside Emily's apartment at 2:43 a.m. Photo. Mark's reflection in her balcony window. Audio clip. Emily whispering, "Just don't post any photos. He's got eyes everywhere lately." The audience murmured. Emily tried to step back. I held her hand tighter. "Then, what is this?" she hissed. I leaned in. "This," I whispered, "is the part where the clock strikes noon." Mark was already walking off. Jason? Frozen. Emily was breathing fast now, looking around, panic crawling across her face like spiders under skin. "Make it stop," she whispered. "Ben, please." But I just turned to the guests. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, lifting my mic, "thank you all for coming. As many of you know, weddings are often about love, commitment, and truth. Today, we'll be focusing on the last one." Gasps. One elderly aunt fainted. A groomsman dropped his drink. Emily was whispering something to the officiant now, her hands shaking, but no one was listening to her anymore, because the next slide had appeared. Act 2, the veil. Under it, a side-by-side of her wearing it today, and her sister wearing it in a Facebook photo from 2019, kissing a man not her husband. Emily turned toward me, desperate, voice cracking. "Why are you doing this?" I looked her dead in the eye. "You started it." Then I turned to face the crowd again. "And I'm just making sure everyone finishes it together." The silence in the venue was almost orchestral. There's a specific kind of quiet people make when their worldview fractures in real time. A collective hush that isn't reverence, it's impact. Guests weren't breathing. They were calculating. Matching dates. Faces. Voices. Whispers that had once been shrugged off now returning with teeth. On screen, the final still of Emily's veil confession, the unmistakable lipstick stain, and time-stamped footage of her pulling it from her sister's closet, telling Jason she won't even know it's gone. And it makes me feel powerful. Powerful. She used that word to describe theft, manipulation, and a lie wrapped around lace. I turned back to her, still holding the mic. No theatrics, just steel. Emily was shaking now. Not crying. Not screaming. Just unraveling, thread by thread. Her hands clenched the bouquet so tightly that petals began to tear. A white rose dropped to the floor. The petals made more of a sound than she did. "Stop this," she whispered through locked teeth. "You're humiliating yourself." "No," I said calmly. "I'm freeing myself. You're just collateral." Mark was nowhere to be seen. He'd left the moment his face hit the second slide. Jason was sweating through his shirt, neck blotched, doing that nervous swallow again as he backed away from the altar like it might collapse under him. But the guests stayed. Oh, they stayed. That's the thing about truth served beautifully. People eat it up, even if it's poison for someone else. Behind the scenes, Sandra signaled me. Time for phase 2. I stepped down from the altar and walked slowly to the edge of the crowd. All eyes followed. Emily stood motionless, still gripping that ruined bouquet like it might hold her together. "Let's shift focus," I said into the mic, to some context. The screen changed again. Now, side-by-side images. Emily at a conference in Chicago last March, one she claimed was exhausting and full of boring panels, and Jason at a hotel bar in that same city, same night, same time. Metadata doesn't lie. Next image, Mark's smartwatch logs. A series of repeated addresses pinged late at night. Always the same, Emily's building. Always after midnight. The data was retrieved from a backup he didn't even know synced automatically. Sandra had pulled it 2 nights ago, bless her petty little heart. The crowd was now whispering full sentences. Guests were turning to one another. Some were checking phones. A few already standing. Harold, Emily's boss, leaned forward, elbows on knees, like he was watching a movie he finally understood. Emily still hadn't moved. Then came the kicker. The screen went black. Text appeared. To Emily, who said I was paranoid. To Jason, who called it nothing serious. To Mark, who always thought he could do better than me. The audio began. Not loud, not dramatic, just a voicemail. Emily's voice. I don't think he suspects anything. He's obsessed with the wedding stuff. Jason says we should wait until after the honeymoon to tell him. I need this to be clean. No drama. No collapse. Just a clean end. The gasp that followed was collective. Almost respectful. Like watching a magician reveal a trick's brutal truth. Emily finally dropped the bouquet. It hit the floor with a wet thud. And still, she didn't speak. The officiant leaned in. Do we continue? I turned to him, smiled faintly. No. I think we've reached the vows. And I stepped back up to the altar. This wasn't meant to hurt you, I said to the crowd. But it was meant to wake you. All of you who've watched people like her carve holes into people like me and call it love. Who've seen betrayal up close and chose silence because it's more polite. Who've mistaken performance for sincerity. I looked at Emily one last time. I don't hate you, I said softly. I just finally see you. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Instead, her mother stood up. Emily, she said sharply, voice like a blade, we need to leave. Emily didn't move, didn't flinch. Her eyes were glass. Her world had ruptured, and she couldn't find a single crack to crawl into. So I did it for her. I gently reached into my breast pocket and pulled out the envelope. The one labeled, Return to Sender. Inside? The ring. Her ring. I laid it on the altar. Quiet. Almost reverent. Then, to the crowd. You'll all be receiving a new invitation soon. Different date. Different location. Different bride. And I walked down the aisle alone. No music. No confetti. Just a long line of stunned faces parting like the Red Sea, trying to decide if I was the villain or the escaped prisoner. But Sandra? Sandra met me at the exit, phone still in hand. She leaned in, whispered just loud enough for me to hear. Jason just left through the side gate. I didn't blink. Let him run, I said. He's headed to his car. I nodded. Let him think it's over. Because it wasn't. Not yet. Jason's car was still warm when I reached it. Black sedan, tinted windows, leather seats, new model, courtesy of a company bonus he never told his girlfriend about. He always liked to pretend he was broke around women. Said it kept expectations manageable. I'd heard him say it enough times to want to staple his tongue to his seatbelt. He didn't see me walk up. He was too busy fumbling with his keys, hand shaking, eyes darting like a trapped raccoon. Going somewhere? I asked, casually leaning against the driver's side window. He jumped so hard he hit the horn with his elbow. The car honked like a dying goose. Jesus, Ben, what the hell? His voice cracked. I thought you left. I did. The ceremony, at least. I gave a tight smile. But your part isn't over. Jason fumbled the key into the ignition, but I reached through the window before he could start the engine and plucked the key straight out. He didn't fight me. Just sat there, breathing heavy, face pale. I'm not going to hit you, I said calmly. If that's what you're worried about, then what do you want? To talk? I think we're past talking. No, I replied. You're past explaining. I'm just getting started. He didn't reply. Just stared forward, waiting for whatever shoe I hadn't dropped yet. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a slim, navy folder. The kind real estate agents use to deliver closing documents. I handed it through the open window. What's this? Your parting gift. He opened it. Read the first page. And froze. His lips moved, but nothing came out. I saw his throat twitch, his jaw go rigid, his eyes flicker with disbelief. That's not possible, he whispered. Oh, it's very possible, I said, crossing my arms. See, while you were busy slipping into Emily's life, you left footprints in mine. The folder was full of signed invoices, call logs, and photos. But the centerpiece? A contract. One Jason had signed 2 years ago, back when he begged me to invest in his doomed software startup. I did. I funded 40% of it. Back then, he called me a brother with more vision than Zuckerberg. What he forgot. I never took my name off the licensing rights. Never filed to remove myself as co-owner. And now? Now that the app was finally profitable thanks to a last-minute pivot to data security for wedding vendors. Oh, the irony. I had every legal right to freeze assets, delay payouts, and hold his fragile little company hostage. You take this, I said slowly, and your investors sue you, not me. You tell them why their profit margins suddenly died on the day of my wedding. Jason's mouth was hanging open. I waited. Let him taste the silence. You wouldn't, he croaked. Ben, come on, this was personal. And this isn't? I barked, the first real emotion I'd let out all day. You want lines, Jason? You slept with my fiancée, lied to my face, and stood next to me at my own goddamn rehearsal dinner like it was a Netflix role. He shrank back. So no, I continued, voice cold again. I'm not just gonna move on. I'm not gonna take up meditation or write a poem about betrayal. I'm gonna dismantle the life you build on mine. He finally looked at me. Eyes glossy, voice small. What do you want? That was the moment. The perfect moment. I leaned in through the window. Not aggressive, just deliberate. I want you to resign. From the company? From everything. Step down. Go quiet. Delete your socials. Leave town. And when people ask what happened, you say, I made a mistake. I needed time to think. That's it. And if I don't? I smiled faintly. Then the next thing on that USB drive. Yes, I know you kept your own copy of that video, the one you and Emily filmed in the lake house, goes public. His blood drained so fast I thought he might pass out. You're bluffing, he whispered. I held up my phone. Click. Played a 5-second audio clip. Emily's voice, again, clear as day. He thinks we deleted it. God, if that ever got out. Jason dropped the folder in his lap like it burned. You recorded everything? I trusted nothing. He didn't speak again. He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, like a man finally seeing the trapdoor under his feet. I dropped the car keys in his lap. Drive wherever you want, I said, stepping back. Just make sure it's far. And fast. I turned to walk away, then paused. Oh, and Jason? He looked up. When you call Emily tonight, and you will, just know she's already blocked your number. He blinked. I didn't tell her to. She did it an hour ago, while you were sweating through your shirt next to the altar. He opened his mouth to ask something, but I was already gone. Across the parking lot, Sandra leaned against her own car, arms folded, grinning like she'd won a bet with the universe. How'd it go? She asked. He's out. Good, she said. Because Act 3 needs new lighting. Lighting? She nodded toward her trunk. And when she popped it open, I saw them. 2 identical white boxes. One labeled to Mark. One labeled to her parents. I raised an eyebrow. What's in them? Sandra's grin widened. Something borrowed. Something viewed. Now that got my heart racing. The church lights dimmed naturally with the setting sun, casting long shadows across the abandoned aisle. Petals still littered the floor. Guests had dispersed, trickling out in stunned silence or whispered phone calls, like mourners at a wake where no one quite knew who died. Emily was nowhere to be seen. Neither was her mother. And Mark? He'd done what Mark always did when things got inconvenient. Disappeared before the debris hit the floor. Which is why Sandra and I had to deliver the debris. We arrived at Mark's condo just before 7. High-rise. Glass balcony. The kind of place with clean countertops and zero emotional furniture. Sandra carried the white box labeled to Mark like it was a wedding cake. Careful, delicate, perfectly weighted. He wasn't home, but I knew the keypad code. Same one since college, 1936. The year of the first NBA championship. That's the thing about Mark. He never changed passwords. He assumed no one ever paid attention to details that didn't have a spotlight on them. I walked in first. The place was quiet. Too quiet. A jacket slung over a chair told me he'd been here earlier. A half-finished protein shake on the counter. The blender still plugged in. In Mark's speak, that meant, I fled in a rush, but I'll be back once the heat cools. Sandra set the box on the marble kitchen island and opened it. Inside, not a bomb, not a video, a folder, and a velvet bag. She pulled the folder out, opened it, and spread the documents across the counter. Bank transfers, anonymous deposits, cross-reference dates. Sandra had traced every payment Mark had ever received from Emily's personal account, which, for the record, she only kept for emergencies. Apparently, emergencies included secretly financing Mark's 6-month sabbatical in Spain under the pretense of figuring himself out. Each wire transfer was labeled with the same note. For discretion, the velvet bag held a pair of cufflinks. But not just any pair. My pair. The ones I gave him for his 30th birthday. Antique. Silver. Engraved on the inside with the words, blood. Not borrowed. And yet, here they were. In a velvet bag. Returned. Like something rented. I stared at them for a long moment. He pawned them, Sanders said. 6 months ago. Got them back last week. Didn't think you'd notice. He always thought he could bluff sincerity. He can't even bluff receipts. I nodded, repackaged everything, then scribbled a quick note and left it on the counter beside the box. You always wanted to be the best man. Congrats. You're the only man she didn't leave first. We didn't wait for him to come back. Next stop, Emily's parents' house. This time, Sandra drove. They lived in the kind of house that had 3 separate sitting rooms and never used the front door. We parked in the cul-de-sac, and I carried the second white box up the long cobblestone path alone. I rang the bell. Her father answered. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in a day. Tie loose. Shirt wrinkled. Jaw clenched like he was still waiting for someone to wake him up from the longest bad dream of his well-structured life. Mr. Langford, I said politely. Mind if I come in for a moment? He didn't answer. Just stepped aside and let me through. Her mother was sitting in the second parlor. Not crying. Just folding napkins. Over and over. There was a pile of perfectly square linen stacked beside her like she was prepping for a dinner that would never happen. I set the box down on the table between them. This is for you, I said, opening the lid. Her mother looked up, her fingers finally still. Inside, a stack of printed screenshots. Text messages from Emily to multiple people. But not just Mark or Jason. No, these were from before that. 2 years back. A different boyfriend. A different story. A pattern. Most telling? A single message sent to her sister after cheating on that boyfriend too. Ben's nice. He's steady. I could build something with him. Maybe not passion, but safety. He'll never suspect a thing. Her mother read the line 3 times. Her fingers began to shake. I slid a small flash drive across the table. Labeled simply, Insurance. What is this? Her father asked, finally finding his voice. Evidence. In case she tries to twist this later. If she rewrites the story, claims pressure, sabotage, mental strain. This proves a timeline of choices. Consistent. Conscious. Her mother sat back. Pale. Lips thin. You're giving this to us? She whispered. I nodded. I don't want revenge, I said. Not anymore. I want accountability. And I want distance. The more you know, the less she can spin. Her father ran a hand down his face. Why are you being so methodical? I stared at the box. Then at them. Because no one expects the quiet man to be the one holding the detonator. Silence stretched between us like rubber. Finally, her mother folded the top of the box closed. Slowly, deliberately. Would you like tea? She asked. No, ma'am. I think you'll need it more than me. And I left. Sandra was waiting in the car, sipping from a thermos. Did they cry? She asked. No. Then it hit harder than I thought. We sat in silence for a moment, both watching the windows of the Langford house. Lights on, curtains unmoved. You know what happens next, right? She asked. I do. You're not going to stop, are you? I shook my head. Because this wasn't about a wedding. No, I said quietly. It was about what happens after you survive one. And in my pocket, an envelope labeled, to the Board of Trustees. Because Emily didn't just cheat on a man. She cheated on a legacy. Monday morning arrived like a blade pressed flat against the skin, not cutting yet, just reminding you it's there. By 9 a.m., Emily's family had gone dark. Her father stopped responding to texts. Her mother's social pages vanished. And Emily? Silent, but not invisible. Because silence, I've learned, isn't peace, it's construction. And Emily had started building something fast. A new version of events, carefully curated for sympathy and plausible deniability. I'd seen the first whisper surface online, cryptic Instagram quotes, subtle unfollows, the quiet deletion of photos where Jason and Mark appeared even in the background. Then came the engagement post takedown. Not a word. Just gone. Sandra texted me a screenshot the moment it happened, and just like that, she erased the version where you existed. But I wasn't worried. Because her reputation wasn't the next domino. Her position was. You see, Emily wasn't just some trophy bride. She sat on the board of a nonprofit arts foundation, one funded primarily by old money, thin patience, and spotless reputations. Appearances mattered there more than impact ever did, and her position wasn't honorary. It was strategic, a social stepping stone carefully carved over 5 years of networking, wine galas, and fake smiles, which made her next move almost laughable. At 9:24 a.m., the foundation issued a short public message. We stand behind Emily Langford during this difficult personal time and condemn the weaponization of private matters. Weaponization. I almost choked on my coffee. Sandra sent another message. There it is. The wounded woman arc has begun. But Emily had made one critical mistake. She underestimated what I left behind at the foundation. Because 4 months ago, she asked me to help her prepare a grant proposal for one of their international projects. Said she was overwhelmed, too many meetings, too little time. I helped, of course. Polished it, packaged it, and submitted it under my name, temporarily until she could update the records. She never did. I still had access. I still had admin credentials. And more importantly, I still had access to the emails. At 9:41 a.m., I logged into the back-end system and queued up a clean little export. Every thread, every draft, every side deal she thought was invisible, including the one where she promised a donor's son a featured artist residency in exchange for a personal arrangement. She never named specifics, but the implication was enough. You don't have to say, offer him a bed, when you've written, he's young, but eager, and I'm good at making people feel necessary. I sent the entire email thread to the board's legal team, and then, to make sure they read it, I printed out one sentence, just one, on thick ivory paper, embossed with the foundation's own logo. I always keep my options open, especially when Ben's not paying attention. No signature, no commentary, just that line, delivered by courier to the board's morning meeting. By 11:15 a.m., her bio had been removed from the website. By noon, Sandra forwarded me a frantic voice message from an anonymous source. There's panic in the boardroom. They're scrambling. No press releases yet, but something big dropped. Emily's name is being removed from everything. And still, no word from her. No calls. No threats. Not even a passive-aggressive emoji. Just that chilling, unstable calm, the kind you hear before a dam breaks. Around 2 p.m., I got the text. From an unknown number. Ben, we need to talk. It's not what you think. Please. I stared at it for a while. Then typed, you're 3 days late. I didn't hit send. Instead, I turned off the phone. Because I didn't need to hear her version. I already knew it. She'd cry. Say it wasn't about love, it was about control. Say Jason manipulated her. Say Mark misunderstood. Say she was cornered. Say anything except the truth. And what would I say? Nothing. Because the final phase wasn't verbal. It was architectural. I was rebuilding. Not just my life, but the storyline. And to do that, I needed one final move. Something theatrical. Something so painfully precise it would force even the quietest witnesses to choose a side. Which is why, at 3:33 p.m., Sandra and I walked into the private lounge at Langford & Weller, her family's legacy firm. We weren't there to shout. We weren't there to confront. We were there to donate. To the arts. Specifically to the Emily Langford Memorial Residency Fund. The name? A formality. The memorial part? Intentional. We left the press release with the receptionist, signed by both of us, quietly announcing the foundation of a fund for young female artists recovering from betrayal, gaslighting, and loss of professional identity at the hands of unqualified mentors. The language was legally untouchable, but everyone would read between the lines. As we stepped into the elevator, Sandra nudged me. You know she'll retaliate. I nodded. She'll scream. She'll twist. She'll drag your name through every brunch table between here and the coast. I hope she does, I said quietly. Why? Because if she's screaming. I turned, eyes fixed on the floor numbers ticking down. It means she's still losing. The letter arrived in a plain white envelope with no return address, hand-delivered to the front desk of my building by someone who looked like they worked in PR, according to the concierge. I knew it was from her the moment I touched it. Not by the handwriting. She didn't write it. She never wrote anything important herself. She outsourced her sincerity. It wasn't a letter. It was an invitation. A single card, Thick, off-white, the kind wedding planners use to announce second chances or tragic elopements. Printed in tasteful serif font. Emily Langford requests a private meeting with Benjamin Hart. 1 hour. Neutral ground. 9 p.m. The Winterbridge Conservatory. No threats. No explanation. No emotion. Just her name, my name, and a time. It was her final move. Or her illusion of one. I arrived early. Sandra stayed in the car. Engine off. Eyes on the entrance. Hands resting on her phone like a sniper's finger on a trigger. The conservatory was empty. Just her. She stood in front of the old piano in the main hall, back to me, wearing the same emerald green coat I bought her last Christmas. The one she said made her feel untouchable. Appropriate. She didn't turn around. I assume you've seen everything now, she said. Her voice didn't shake. Define everything, I replied. She turned slowly. The coat fell open just enough to show she was wearing black underneath. Not morning black, statement black. The kind people wear when they want to project power through absence. You humiliated me, she said softly. No, I replied. You did that. I just provided the mirror. She stepped closer. I want to explain. I didn't come for an explanation. Then why are you here? I paused. To make sure you hear it. Hear what? That you didn't break me, I said. You clarified me. There's a difference. She inhaled sharply. Controlled. Not fragile, strategic. I was never going to marry you, she said. Not really. I nodded. I know. You were convenient. You were what I needed to stop looking like chaos. And I was happy to play the role, I said, until you cast my brother and best friend in the same act. You think this was personal? You are personal. That got her. A flicker in her jaw. A twitch in her eyelid. She stepped around the piano, fingers grazing the keys. I didn't expect you to go nuclear. You should have. You used to be soft. I was asleep. She looked up. I can ruin you, she said. Professionally. You've made enemies. I know people who'll bury you so slowly. You won't even feel the dirt. I didn't blink. I've already buried myself once, I said. That's why I walk lighter now. She stepped even closer. And then it came. The real reason we were here. I want to cut a deal, she said. There it was. Because underneath all the apologies and theatrics and half-burnt bridges, Emily was still a strategist. She still thought the board seat could be salvaged, that her family name could be hosed clean, that the scandal would be buried under a bigger one. What kind of deal? You stop the press leak. I disappear quietly. No interviews. No letters. I vanish. And you keep your company. I'll make sure Jason stays gone. I'll even write a check. Enough to make this look like a failed engagement. Nothing more. No. Ben. I raised a hand. You think this was about money? I think this was about control. You're wrong. Then what do you want? I stepped forward until we were just a breath apart. I want you to live in a world where you no longer control the narrative, where your power doesn't come from charm or mystery or reinvention. I want you to wake up in a space where no one believes your version first. That's not justice. No, I said. That's balance. She stood there, stunned. Not angry. Not defensive. Just silent. For the first time. And then I said it. By the way, I added, turning toward the door, your sister called me. Her head snapped up. She asked if I ever suspected her too. If I thought she was part of this. Emily swallowed. And I told her the truth, I said, pulling the door open. That she wasn't the one who wore the veil. Behind me, she exhaled sharply. Not because she was guilty. Because she knew what came next. I stepped outside. Sandra was already waiting, door open, engine running. How did it go, she asked. She tried to cut a deal. And she doesn't know it's too late. Sandra nodded, handed me her phone. You'll want to see this. It was a video. Posted 20 minutes ago. Anonymous source. Blurred faces. Overlaid text. The wedding that didn't happen, and why everyone should be paying attention to what did. Under it, my initials. Not my name. Just enough for the world to wonder. The comments were already pouring in. And the final slide? A single sentence. If truth is a wedding, then betrayal is the reception. Everyone shows up eventually. I leaned back in the seat. Tension. Gone. Storm. Not over. But named. The last move wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. By Tuesday morning, 3 names were trending on local media circuits: Emily Langford, Jason Hill, and Mark Hart. The headline wasn't scandal, it was pattern. That's what the anonymous dossier emphasized. A deliberate history of manipulation, relational fraud, internal conflicts within the Langford Foundation, and a private engagement that imploded 48 hours before a 7-figure wedding. No curses, no opinions, just receipts. The dossier was structured like a museum exhibit. Every betrayal in a glass case. No interpretation required. And no one knew who published it. Sandra called it the ghost file. They tried to deny it. Emily issued a statement through her attorney. Fabricated, inflammatory, taken out of context. But by then, too many people had seen it. Screenshots can't be recalled. Her board seat? Gone. Jason's company? Dissolved. Mark? Not fired, not disgraced, but relocated. Somewhere quiet, corporate, and painfully unremarkable. A punishment he'd never publicly admit, but would feel every time he looked at his LinkedIn profile and saw the gap. And me? I didn't gloat. I didn't post a single word. I let silence do what it does best, prove the point. Because the people who know the truth don't need to explain it. They just need to outlast the lie. 3 weeks later, I moved out of the apartment I'd been sharing with a ghost. Nothing dramatic. No burning the dress moment. I sold the tux, donated the furniture, took the coffee machine, left behind the bracelet Emily asked me to return. It sat in the kitchen drawer, still clasped, still cold. I didn't touch it. That was her luck to carry now, not mine. Sandra and I didn't become a couple. That would have been too easy, too convenient. We respected each other too much for that. We shared something rarer, a mutual understanding of what it means to rebuild with intention. She returned to her freelance PR work, twice the rate, half the patience. Everyone suddenly wanted the girl who helped detonate a fake fairy tale. I started writing again, privately. No memoir, no revenge porn, just a collection of moments. Honest ones, observed, undiluted. One of them reads, "It wasn't the betrayal that broke me. It was the way they expected me to carry it quietly. It doesn't have a title. I don't need one." Last I heard, Emily moved west. Somewhere dry. Rebranding herself again. Trying out non-profit advocacy. Irony isn't dead, it just has good lighting. She'll find someone else eventually. Someone steady. Someone polite. Someone who doesn't ask too many questions. She'll smile again. She'll sip wine at benefit galas. And she'll swear, she's learned her lesson. But people like her don't learn. They relocate. They adapt. They costume. And they wait for new mirrors. What she doesn't know is, this time, I took them all with me. Every mirror. Every reflection she ever feared someone might hold up. She can try to rebuild. But she'll always have to do it in the dark.